What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Project Boro preview show where we look ahead to Boro's upcoming games in the league. And today we are looking ahead to our final game before the first international break of the season. I can't believe we're already at an international break. It's absolutely horrid, but then equally, with the way Boro are playing at the moment, it might actually be a good thing. And we are going to do our absolute utmost to not mention a certain scoreline in a certain cup competition that happened last night at the Riverside.
He has got beyond the stone defence. He's through, one-on-one, and Coburn is denied. Well, he looked destined to score. Reaction, Josh Coburn to deny Sonny Finch. Oh, that's a lovely ball. And again, Gilbert in towards Coburn. This will drop. This is certainly a chance for Boro. Surprising to see him take that first touch.
So, forgetting that ever existed, Boro head down to the Cardiff City Stadium on Saturday at another one of them ridiculously stupid 12:30 kickoffs. And honestly, firstly, I just want to say, it's so dumb making any football team, especially, my team at the moment, Boro, travel all the way down to Cardiff, which is a 9-10 hour round trip, and they've got to get there for 12:30 to kick off. It's ridiculous. But anyway, enough of that. We're head down there to Cardiff and are in hope of picking up our second league winner this season, despite the fact we probably should have had 2 or maybe even 3 wins already. Everything about Boro's season thus far has looked good data-wise. The only thing that hasn't has been the scorelines. Cardiff come in to this game bottom of the league currently. They also, you could say, have had games and results that maybe don't 100% represent how their season has truly gone, but like with Boro, you judge it on where they are in the scoreline and what the results were, and Cardiff sit bottom with only 1 point from their opening 3 games, still winless, having lost 2 against Sunderland and Burnley and drawing last weekend's South Wales derby against Swansea. They've scored 1 goal this season and conceded 8. Now, what I will say about Cardiff is I feel like a lot of their stats and a lot of their data is massively overinflated in a negative sense because of that one-off freak result against Burnley. It was an absolute freak. It was never a 5-0 game in a month of Sundays. So there is an added caveat here that I think Cardiff should not be judged as a team who are bottom of the league and a team who are just conceding goals left, right and centre. From what I can gather, they aren't the best team going forward. They're not the most overly creative team in the world, and I'll run through some stats shortly, but they've certainly not deserved to concede the number of goals that they have. They performed commendably well against Sunderland on the opening day, but as we've seen from how Sunderland have started, there's no shame in losing to that side who are flying at the moment. As I mentioned and I've alluded to, the Burnley game was an absolute joke. Burnley scored 5 goals from an XG of 0.8, and they scored 5 with having only 4 shots on target. It was ridiculous, and Cardiff arguably should have been ahead in that game. They played really well in that first half at Burnley and deserved something, never mind a 5-0 battering. However, last week in the South Wales derby, when I watched most of that game, granted I only saw the first half or so, Cardiff didn't look all that great in the South Wales derby. It is a fixture they've struggled with in recent times, and it was away from home, so it's not easy, of course, but yeah, they grew into the game and got a point from it, which I'm sure they were delighted by, but they certainly looked second best against a Swansea side who were growing into the season, but I wouldn't say a world beaters. So Cardiff are tough. They're a tough team to judge right now, but you know what? They've had 2 games against 2 sides who have scored a stupid amount of goals and are both towards the top of the league. One is top of the league and another is a derby, so you can't judge them at this point, really. However, looking at their stats, they are 22nd in the Championship for goals per game. Obviously, they've only scored once this season, which isn't great, and they are bottom of the league for goals conceded, albeit, as I say, massive chunk of that was against Burnley, which a lot of them probably would never have happened if you play that game another 10 times. They are 9th in the league for possession, so they're not a team that, are trying to not have the ball, and by the sounds of it, Errol Bullitt is wanting his team to have more possession. He's wanting his team to dictate the game a little bit more than they normally have been. And I think there maybe is a bit of a transition period at the minute with Cardiff where, he's bringing in players to try and implement a more possession-based style. The players are getting adjusted to it. The overall squad is getting adjusted to it. And it might just take time before they fully grasp this style he seems to be adopting. But they are not. So they're not a side that are just going to sit back and surrender the ball, albeit, yes, Boro you'd expect to have a lot more of the ball. Cardiff aren't a side who are just going to sit back and let you have it. But for the possession they've had, they've not created all that much. They are 22nd in the league for expected goals and 15th for shots on target. So they're not a side that threaten the goal all that much. But as I say, they're actually 10th for goals against, so you can't say they've deservedly conceded 8 goals. They should never have conceded that many goals. They've overperformed in terms of how many goals, or they've underperformed in terms of how many goals they've conceded, whereas Boro, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. We've let in way more goals than we ever should do, so you're looking at two sides here who might be the perfect counteract for one another. They might cancel each other out completely. Boro, a team with loads of possession, loads of chances, don't score and shouldn't be conceding but gift goals. Cardiff, on the other hand, a team that doesn't create all that much and aren't very good going forward, but concede a lot of goals. Which way is this game going to go? Your guess is as good as mine. As for the starting 11 for Cardiff, again, it's hard to guess what they'll field, the team they'll field. I mean, they adopt a 4-2-3-1, so they play a very similar style to Boro. And in the last game, they fielded a decent team, I would say. If I was to pick out a couple of individuals from the Cardiff team that stand out to me, both one way or the other, I think Ethan Horvath in the goal is a concern for me. He doesn't look particularly good on the ball. He looks a little bit nervy. He obviously dropped that clanger against Burnley, so I think if Boro can press him, we might have joy winning the ball back from his turnovers. If Cardiff do try and pull out from the back and we put pressure on him, he might make a couple of mistakes, knock the ball out of play, etc. So that could be a good route for Boro to get back into the game. They've got a decent defensive partnership. Callum Chambers, of course, maybe past his best at this point, but used to play for Boro, of course, in our Premier League season. Not a bad signing at all. Perry and G is one who I think will always provide a attacking outlet down the right-hand side. Decent from set pieces too, so any joy Cardiff may or may not have might come through him, and you could say the same for O'Dowda, who played on the left-hand side against Swansea. I'm not particularly familiar with Cardiff's midfield, so I'm hoping that midfield too, and our midfield too, I think we'll come out on top of the midfield battle there, with Hackney and Morris likely starting. However, I do get slight PTSD when I see Chris Willock in the team for Cardiff, albeit he's not played anywhere near as good and has not played maybe as much football as he had done previously in the last 18 months or so. He is a player who has always stepped up and always caused Boro problems. He's one of them players, you come up against a team or come up against a player who's a bogey player who always scores against you. Chris Willock is that player, and it wouldn't surprise me if he inflicted damage on Boro once again. And I'm not really that fussed or worried about any of Cardiff's other attacking players. Aaron Ramsey's one of them where could produce a moment of magic, but I guess isn't fit enough and doesn't do it on a consistent enough basis at the moment. They did have Mighty out on the right-hand side against Swansea, and I'm not too sure who they'll have up front either. I think Robinson is the only player who's scored a goal for them thus far this season. He's started on the bench, Callum Robinson. So, yeah, they've had only Tanner. They've had Callum Robinson come off the bench and make an impact against Swansea, so maybe they'll come in and maybe they'll start. We'll have to wait and see. But there's not too many players I'm that worried about in terms of the Cardiff side. As for Boro's starting 11, well, this will be interesting because, again, we've got injuries, because of course we do. I think the back four could change once again. Dieng will be in goal. I don't think the error will drop him out the team, the error that him and Clark had last week. I don't think that's going to do anything to disrupt Senny Dieng's place between the sticks. However, I think we might have a different player at left back. I honestly feel like, and I didn't want to mention the Stoke game last night, but I'm going to mention it. Lucas Engel had one of the worst second halves I think I've ever seen in a Boro shirt. He come on for young George McCormick's second half, and in a 12-minute spell, Stoke scored, was it 4 goals? All of which come down Lucas Engel's left. He looked miles off it, and I get the idea that Engel is probably a confidence player, and I feel like his confidence is flawed right now. And sometimes you've got to just take a player out the firing line. Sometimes you've just got to take a player out the side for a bit, take him out the firing line, let him build his confidence back up and come back in. I think Engels at that point. The question, of course, is, well, who plays? Because Bangura's injured. We've just signed Neto Borges, and it might be a bit of an ask, and I just don't see Carrick being the sort of manager who would do this, but I'd put him straight in. I'd put Neto Borges straight in on Saturday. I just can't see him on his debut being any worse than what Lucas Engel potentially could be. And he's obviously our only option. I don't think George McCormick would start. So for me, I think Neto Borges maybe should come straight in. And let's just see how he does. Because for me, the more Engel stays in this team, the more I think he could be liable for making mistakes and could do more damage to his confidence. So, you know what? Stick him on the left. See what happens. I think on the other end of things, I think Vandenberg still won't be ready. I think they'll probably not risk him until after the international break. Now give him more time to recover. So I think Ayling will once again partner Matt Clark. Dijksteel will once again come in at right back. As for Boro's midfield, I think it will stay completely as is. Morris and Hackney will remain as the midfield too. And I do think McGree will be back on the left-hand side. Carrick did say after last weekend's game against Portsmouth, McGree would likely be back in against either Stoke or Cardiff at the weekend, and I think the fact that he wasn't even in the squad last night in that cup game we shall not mention, McGree will be back in the team. Hopefully he'll come straight in, because I just don't have faith in Bergzog starting, albeit maybe he is, as I say, more suited on the counter in games away from home. But I think Boro will still have more of the ball, and it might be more like a bit of a home game once, you know, Boro dictate play and have more of the ball. So I think we still might encounter the same sort of issues with Bergzog as we did against Portsmouth, maybe Derby as well, with a team that might sit back. So I think McGree getting him back in will help us potentially unlock the door when it comes to trying to break through Cardiff. I think despite all the discourse around Finn Azaz, he created more chances than any of the Boro player last weekend against Portsmouth and should not be dropped. Again, you could talk about Azaz till the cows come home, but for me, I think he starts. I don't care how many times he might try and play a ball through, how many times he might misplace a pass. He's a player who tries to make things happen, and he creates opportunities and shouldn't be dropped as yet, even with Tommy Conway and maybe even Alex Gilbert waiting in the wings, who was brilliant last night. That's the only thing I will mention about Cardiff is Alex Gilbert. He was great. But Azaz, I think, will remain in there, and I think Azai Jones will start on the right again. To be honest, I'd like to see Hamilton on the right-hand side. I don't like him on the left. He played there again last night in that sort of inverted winger cutting inside on the left row. It does not suit Hamilton at all. I didn't like it whatsoever. I think he's got to provide competition for Jones on the right, and he's not going to come in for him yet. So Jones will start, and Elath, of course, will be up front. Having a brief discussion on Boro. I know it's always a bit early to say this is a must-win game, yada, yada, yada. And of course, it's not a must-win game, but it's a game I would very much like Boro to win, because coming out of the opening 4 games and going into the international break, if Boro have 4 points or less, it would be massively, massively disappointing. You know, we beat Swansea on the opening day. First time in 10 years we've won on the opening day, and we looked so solid at the back. And it's typical of Boro that we then play 2 newly promoted sides and fail to beat either of them, and somehow lose both games when we absolutely battered both teams and basically beat ourselves. I think them 2 freakish, horribly frustrating results could be banished and forgotten about if Boro win here. You know, just before the international break, get a win, solid win. 7 points from 4, I'm happy with. You know, 7 points from 4 games is just under 2 points a game. At this stage of the season, I'm not bothered about Boro being top of the league. I'm not looking at the league table. I'm not bothered that we're 5 points behind whoever's top or whatever it may be. It's all about points per game for me. You know, the teams at the top who have started well will inevitably regress, and the teams who are probably at the bottom who've started badly will probably improve. It's all about the points per game we get, and if we roughly keep aiming in and around 2 points per game throughout the season, inevitably we'll end up, just by the averages, we'll end up in and around the top 6, maybe even higher. So I'd take 7 points from 4. I know what people will say about the opposition, and we should have 9 from 9, and I agree completely we should have 9 from 9, but we don't, and we can only look at the game that's ahead, and I don't think Cardiff will be a pushover. In fact, I think they're a massive, massive banana skin, and a bit like us, have had results that don't quite reflect where they should be. They shouldn't be bottom of the league, in my opinion, but they are still a team, Boro, with our aspirations, should be beating. So win this game, we forget about the others, and we just look ahead with what I think would be a very solid start. You know, compare that to last season where we had 1 point after the first international break. 7 would be an outstanding return, really, when you think about it. However, if Boro fail to win here, and it may be our own downfall, because we know we'll create chances, we know we'll have more of the ball. The only way we don't win this game is if we continue to do the same things wrong. That's fluff our chances and gift the opposition goals, because we've not given away much at all. If that happens again, it's going to be an incredibly frustrating mood going into the international break. And we're going to go in frustrated, we're going to go in really, really irritated, just itching to have another game, but we've got 2 weeks to fester and sit and think on this really frustrating start. I do not want that, and I feel like it will be like taking a humidifier into a dusty room. It will clear the air, it will be fresh, it will be lovely, and we can then come back after 2 weeks and crack on and kick on, like hopefully what we did last season. So I would just love a win, just so we can all breathe a sigh of relief and really look forward and ignore what has sort of been a frustrating start to the season. Before we finish, then a quick look head-to-head. And this will favour Boro fans. This is more like it. The overall head-to-head in the league, Boro are 12 wins to Cardiff's 8, with only 2 draws between the sides. But Boro's recent record against Cardiff is good. Our record at Cardiff is even better. Boro have won each of our last 3 meetings against Cardiff. We, of course, finished last season towards the end with a 4-1 win down at Cardiff before, obviously, we beat them 2-0 at home in the reverse fixture. In fact, Boro have won each of our last 3 meetings against Cardiff. Their last win came in September 2022 when we had that horrendous first half when we were 3-0 down and was right in the peak of Chris Wilder's downfall as Boro manager. That win at the Riverside is one of Cardiff's only 2 victories against Boro in our last 9 meetings. So points and wins are rare for Cardiff against Boro. And Cardiff itself is a happy hunting ground because, as I say, we are unbeaten in our last 4 visits to Cardiff. We've won 3 of them games and we've scored 10 goals. So we like scoring at Cardiff. We like it. And goals seem to go in down there. So I'm hoping it will be more of the same. So finishing off with my prediction. I predicted us to beat Portsmouth. I predicted us to beat Derby. We didn't. And I'm going to continue to be deluded. And I'm going to predict us to beat Cardiff. We should have won every game this far, and if we just keep doing what we're doing, surely the goals have got to start flying in, surely. But I'm not going to predict quite that. I am going to say 2-1 Boro. Cardiff will get a goal, maybe from a set piece, maybe from another Boro error. But please, 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 Boro, have some goals going in the other end. And if we do get presented with clear chances, please, for the love of God, score them. Please, our finishing this season has been shocking. But let me know your thoughts on this upcoming game in the comment section below. Your predictions, your thoughts, your fears for this game, whether you're a Boro fan or a Cardiff fan, and of course, your predictions most importantly. And if you've enjoyed the video, do hit a like on this video. If you're listening on the podcast providers, do give me a like and a rating over there as well, and subscribe and follow me on each of them platforms. And as I say, comment below. I really, really appreciate hearing from you guys. And until next time, I'll be back with hopefully a positive review of this game at the weekend. But with Boro at the minute, who the hell knows what's going to happen. But until then, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.